The state of New Jersey is using infant blood as an end run around the warrant requirement. They're asking for blood stored in government facilities and taken from newborn babies and using it to get probable cause to take our own client's blood. You can imagine why my mind went like right here. So let's first talk about the blood. This is an infant blood screening card. When any baby is born in the United States, any of you who have children, when your baby was born, their heel was pricked by the nurse, and that little baby heel was pressed up against a card like this, and 5 or 6, depending on the state, blood spots were taken from your child. And the purpose was really twofold. The first purpose was, as I said, to identify those diseases that were hard to clinically diagnose, but if they showed up early, doctors could treat them. And the other thing was to really have this early checkpoint in our healthcare system. When you think about it, babies are really a captive audience, right? They're not gonna run away. The parents in the hospital for the first 24 to 48 hours don't really know what's going on. And we even put them behind those little glass things and everybody goes and stares at them. That's like they're in prison already, right? Like they're in these little prisons. And so it was a perfect sample group, right? It's a perfect way. We have every child born in the United States. We can grab their blood right within the first 24 to 48 hours of life. But then, as always happens with the government, first they want a little, then they want a lot, then they want more. So in 2005, they expanded the list of diseases that we were screening for. So we've gone from screening for those diseases that can be treated to screening for some that can't be treated, screening for some that go beyond the types of illnesses that fit that original criteria. What's the point of screening for a disease that we can't treat? But of course, we started adding more and more diseases. We've gone from 29 to many states are screening for more than 80 diseases. And we're also screening for hearing loss and congenital heart defects, which are really something that could be clinically diagnosed. There's no reason to have to diagnose these things within the first 48 hours of life. Here is a kind of a punched out screening card, one that has been used by the lab to screen for genetic tests. And you'll notice something. There are 2 completely whole circles of blood that don't need to be touched. And these are even in states like California that screen for more than 80 diseases. So they only need 3 of these samples in order to get what they need to do all of that testing. Despite this fact, states like California and many others have moved to taking 6 spots of blood. So now in California, they're using 3, they're keeping 3. And of course, the people who are doing it are smiling, right? They're doing this for good reason. They're uncovering the epidemiology of various diseases. Each year, 12,500 babies are diagnosed with one of the conditions. So it is saving lives, right? It's saving people's children. But the question is, what happens to that blood after it's used for the purpose for which it is taken? And that's where it starts to get into rooms in the desert and locked doors. So this brings us to Atlantic County, New Jersey. And so here's what happened. There was a cold rape case from 1996, dormant for years, until some bright guy at the state police decided to see if his hunch about a suspect was correct. They had a suspect. That suspect had a son. The son was not the victim. The son was 8 years old at the time. The son had nothing to do with this rape case. But he decided to call the Department of Public Health and ask for the suspect's son's blood spot. And from the suspect's son's blood spot, they developed a YSTR profile, and they determined that the person who committed this crime was a male relative of this 8-year-old boy who wasn't even born at the time the crime was committed. Then they used that information to type up a search warrant and get a warrant for our client's blood. A clear end run around the Fourth Amendment, right? And done to the Department of Public Health on a subpoena only. No warrant, nothing to the Department of Public Health. So we found out about this and prepared to litigate the case. So what we did first was do extensive discovery to make sure we knew the scope of the problem as it related to our client. Tamar Lair wrote a really brilliant brief about the purpose of the newborn screening lab, referenced other DNA statutes about this is a clear violation of the Fourth Amendment. But we wanted to know, how often are they doing this? What is going on? What are you doing with baby blood? And the Department of Public Health rejected our public records request. They said, we're not giving you any information about this. If you want it, sue us, which is what we did. And we're gonna put a pin in that for a moment and talk about that a little bit later. So in 2014, there was a bunch of families in Minnesota. They sued to have blood spots destroyed, because they said we should have been informed not just about how you were going to use it to test my child, but about the research purposes and all the other stuff we're going to talk about down the line. And the Minnesota courts agreed. They agreed a lot. And for years, the state of Minnesota defied court orders to destroy that blood because they need it for the children. Right? They kept saying, but we really, really need it. We really don't want to destroy it. And they kept getting dragged back into court. And then finally, the families prevailed and almost 1 million blood spots were destroyed. Most states keep the cards. They keep them in these little zip packages. We think in refrigerated places. I don't know, I haven't snuck into the government facility yet and actually opened the door. They tell us there's no genome databases, right? Like says the people with the labs in the desert. This is a map from Natalie Ram's article. The states in blue are states that say something in their statutes about whether police can use it. In Mississippi, under no circumstances can it be used in any other purposes except for confirmation of that test result. For New York, when you go into the frequently asked questions, it says, the last one says, can anyone access the stored blood spots? And they say only in rare cases. They're confidential. Law enforcement officials can also get access with a court order signed by a judge. Judges rarely approve these. That's just a lie. The first step is you need to do a public records request. New Jersey is one of the most difficult places to get public records. What we call OPRA, the Open Public Records Act, is like impossible in New Jersey. So they told us no, we had to sue them. And what we did was we said, we don't want the names of the times they've done this. We just want to know what police departments have done it, what information they asked for, how they asked for it. And it can all be anonymized. We don't need the names of the cases or the clients or anything. And the place that we ran into a problem is under our OPRA, you have to state your interest. And as the public defender's office, it was kind of like, what interest do we have in like everybody else's random subpoenas, right? We got the information in discovery for our client. So we used the press as a way to say the people have a right to know. Because members of the press have a very different interest, right? They have an interest in finding out about our government, reporting on it. So it enabled us to really broaden the scope of the request and enabled us to get past that hurdle by partnering with a media outlet. And it also gave us an opportunity for publicity. So for months, we're saying, this could happen hundreds of times, it could happen thousands of times. We want to know. And we finally won, and we found out, and it was 5. And I was like, it could happen 6 times, right? Like, so the number was small, but it didn't matter because the publicity had like just taken on a life of its own. Some people say, well, what did you get? You only found out that 5 things happened. What we got from this was an opportunity to get ahead of an issue that I think is going to be a battleground, and we can get ahead of it now. And that's one of the things I love about coming to this space with NACDL, is that if we see an issue coming down the pike, we can enlist all of you to help. The more police get away with it, the more they're gonna do it. And as time evolves, I think we have a short period of time to nip this in the bud before it becomes a bigger thing.